Hi, I'm going to be responding to an article I found called Technology in the Classroom, Teachers and Technology, A Technological Divide by Gregory Clark and Jesse Zagarel. Cool name. So this 2012 article addresses technological divide, and it's using the US as an example, but I feel that all the main arguments are relevant to my current educational context in BC, so it really gave me a lot to think about. The main questions are, do schools implement technology in the same degree? How much technology should be utilized in classrooms? How technologically savvy are teachers? Why are some teachers resistant to technology? How do we bridge this educational divide, and how do we support and promote using technology to teach students? So one of the main points discussed is the perspective of school administration. So it states, administrators have some influence, but in the long run, it comes down to the availability of funds. Who's going to pay for training? Can administrators absorb training costs, or is it educators' responsibility to keep up with the rest of the technological world by seeking their own professional development? So to discuss how admin may have amplified certain problems in the US, they bring attention to an initiative called Preparing Tomorrow's Teachers to Teach with Technology, or PT3. So this was an initiative in the US whereby millions of dollars were made available in grants, but unfortunately a lot of this money was mismanaged. They point out that in some cases, K-12 administrators expressed an initial interest in participating, but once the grant was funded, they reported that the PT3 project no longer aligned with their district's goals. Now, I see this as being a very common problem. Money comes in, and the people who are deciding how to spend it are often moving around, whether it's the people deciding who receives the grants, or whether it's the administrators at the school deciding how it's going to be spent. In my own particular context, I've noticed that schools that I work at, they'll buy a whole bunch of iPads, and they'll get them all working really well. Mind you, they'll all have different apps on them, some of which work, some of which don't, some of which are redundant. But then they'll also go and buy a whole bunch of Dell notebooks, and sometimes you get one, sometimes you get the other, sometimes the notebooks aren't working, well, frequently. They're glitchy, and I just can't understand why that decision would have been made. If you have something that's working, even if it's more expensive, you should invest in the thing that's working and be consistent, and try to only use that tool for as long as you possibly can. Then they discussed the role of teachers. So pointing out that those more familiar with technology have been dubbed the net generation, as in internet, or digital natives. Digital natives are considered to be more comfortable with digital technology than previous generations. So as a member of the net generation, I would be the first to admit this assumption doesn't always hold up. Many of us are always in need of deeper training. Schools have tech support, but these people are really busy, not always available. We're encouraged to get training, but it's not exactly mandatory. It's kind of optional. There's not a lot of funding for it. And the tools are always changing. For example, during the pandemic, when my school, we all had to learn Teams. I'm sure many of you have had to do the same. I found it very, very confusing, and I had to put in a lot of extra hours figuring it out. And I know I have an advantage over a lot of my colleagues who maybe had less experience with that kind of stuff, but it wasn't enough for me to just coast by. I still needed more training, which wasn't paid for. So next, the article discusses the contrast between the business world, where tech is developed, and the educational world, where we're trying to use it. So they state, the educational culture contrasts that of a business culture in terms of philosophy and values. Interactive computer technology was created in the business world, and schools do not function in the same manner. Thus, the education system lacks strategies or solutions for addressing problems that arise. So this can be seen in the way that, maybe less so in BC's current curriculum, but in a lot of ways, teachers often are still teaching kind of in an old school way, where there's a certain academic objectives that we're trying to have our students hit. And sometimes investing a lot of time into technology maybe doesn't seem like it's going to get us there in a clear line the way we'd want it to. So the article lists some of the benefits of tech, such as higher degrees of interaction, experimenting, students working in teams, and cooperating. So a teacher might worry that this could hinder development of the kind of expertise that might be useful for dealing with a specific mode of testing. So an individual's ability to solve problems of a specific type. In other words, your student might be gaining all kinds of really useful skills for becoming a productive member of the modern world, but they might not be getting any better at, for example, writing sentences or solving math problems. In conclusion, I think there's no question that despite all the problems that we have, we've come such a long way. And the problem I see is that we're kind of hoping that eventually these problems are going to go away and everything is going to be so smooth and problem-free. But really, our best bet is just to accept that there will always be problems, and we need to accept that these problems, that is the education that our students need. They're never going to live in a world where they don't have to know how to troubleshoot tech problems. So all we can really do is model that as these issues arise, they are an opportunity for growth. Thank you.